All right, welcome to another deep dive, you guys. So this is going to be an interesting one. You ready to get into it?
Absolutely. Always ready to jump into something new.
So we're going deep on Dan Duchaine's book, the IsoCaloric No Diet Fat Burning Handbook.
hmm
And we've got the book right here, obviously, as always, trying to break this down for you guys, let you know what's inside.
This is one that people have been asking about for a while, I know. It seems like there's a lot of interest in this no diet approach.
Yeah, and I can see why. Who wouldn't want to burn fat without all those crazy restrictions, right?
Right. It's definitely an appealing idea, especially if you've tried all the usual diet stuff and not had much luck.
Exactly. So our mission today, if you choose to accept it, is to really unpack the core principles of this isocaloric system. How can you burn fat without feeling like you're constantly on a diet?
And we're going to do it without overwhelming you. We want you to walk away with some real aha moments, some actionable insights you can actually use.
Totally. So one of the first things that jumped out at me when I started reading this was the historical context Duchaine sets up. He talks about how new scientific ideas, they often go through these three stages of acceptance, right? First, there's disbelief. People just don't buy it, might even laugh it off.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that happen so many times, especially with anything that challenges the conventional wisdom.
Then there's the second stage where people start to get really defensive. There's opposition, even hostility sometimes. It's like they feel threatened by this new idea.
They dig in their heels and resist change, even if the evidence is mounting.
And then finally, if the idea has merit, it kind of slowly becomes accepted as a new normal. Everyone's doing it.
It's funny how that works, right? What was once radical becomes commonplace.
So Duchaine suggests that his isocaloric approach might have been in that first stage, that disbelief stage, back in '96 when the book was published. I mean, think about it. This was a time when low fat, everything was all the rage.
Oh, yeah. Fat was the enemy back then. Everyone was terrified of it.
Right. So for him to come out and say, hey, you can actually eat fat and still burn fat, that probably sounded pretty crazy to a lot of people back then.
It definitely went against the grain of what most people believed at the time.
But the thing is, when you look at the obesity trends, something clearly wasn't working. I mean, the book even points out that obesity rates were climbing in America, even though the amount of fat people were eating was going down. It's figure one in the book if you want to check it out.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It suggests that just cutting fat wasn't the answer. There had to be more to it.
And then you add in the statistic that nearly 60% of overweight American men who manage to lose weight, they gain it all back within a year. That's pretty discouraging, right?
It highlights the need for a more sustainable approach, something that doesn't feel like a constant battle.
And that's exactly what Duchaine is trying to offer with this isocaloric system, this no-diet approach. It's about burning fat and building the body you want without drugs, starvation, endless workouts, diet pills, all that stuff. It even says you don't need iron willpower.
So what's the secret? What's the underlying principle here that makes this different?
Well, it starts with understanding your body's natural biochemical environment. It's about working with your body, not against it. And a big part of that is recognizing the role of insulin.
Insulin, that's the hormone that regulates blood sugar, right?
Exactly. And one of the key takeaways here is that high insulin levels can actually hinder fat burning. It's like when your insulin is high, your body goes into fat storage mode.
Ah, I see. So it's not just about calories, it's about managing your hormonal response to the food you eat.
Exactly. And the isocaloric approach aims to do that by keeping your blood sugar stable throughout the day. It's about avoiding those big spikes and crashes that can mess with your insulin levels.
Okay, so how do you do that? What's the practical strategy here?
So the core idea is to eat roughly equal amounts of protein, carbohydrates, and fats, spread out over 5 to 6 meals throughout the day. That's the isocaloric part. It's about balance.
So not drastically cutting any one macronutrient, not going super low carb or low fat.
Right. And by having these smaller, balanced meals more frequently, you're providing your body with a steady stream of energy, which helps keep your blood sugar levels more stable.
That makes sense. It's like giving your body a consistent fuel supply instead of forcing it to deal with these big surges of energy all at once.
Exactly. And when your blood sugar is stable, your insulin levels are more likely to stay within a moderate range, which creates an environment where your body can more readily access and burn stored fat.
Okay, so that's the big picture. Now let's break down the specifics a bit. What kind of carbohydrates are we talking about here? Because if the goal is to keep blood sugar stable, I'm guessing we're not loading up on sugary drinks and processed snacks.
You're absolutely right. The book really emphasizes choosing largely unrefined carbohydrates. Things like whole grains, brown rice, oats, quinoa, plenty of vegetables, the kinds of carbs that break down slowly and don't cause those rapid spikes in blood sugar.
So it's about focusing on complex carbs over simple carbs, choosing foods that provide a slower, more sustained release of energy.
Exactly. And what about protein and fats?
Well, the book really emphasizes the importance of protein, not just for building muscle, but for fat burning as well.
Yeah, protein has this thing called a thermic effect, which means your body actually burns more calories by digesting protein compared to carbs or fats. So that's a bonus right there.
Interesting. So eating protein can actually help boost your metabolism a bit.
And it also helps preserve your muscle mass while you're losing fat. You don't want to end up looking skinny fat, right?
Definitely not. What about fats? I'm curious about that, given the whole low-fat craze that was happening when this book came out.
Well, the book doesn't demonize fats at all. In fact, it encourages eating healthy fats. Things like avocados, nuts, olive oil, fatty fish, the good stuff.
So it's about choosing the right types of fat,
Mhm.
the ones that support your body rather than hinder it.
Exactly. And it makes it clear to avoid the unhealthy fats like
Mm.
trans fats and excessive saturated fats. That stuff's no good for anyone.
Makes sense. So we've got the macronutrients covered. What else does this isocaloric approach recommend?
Well, hydration is a big one. Drinking plenty of water throughout the day. That's just crucial for so many bodily functions.
Yeah, water is essential for everything. It helps with digestion, energy production, even fat burning.
And then there's coffee. The book actually suggests having a cup of coffee or espresso each day.
Oh, really? I'm definitely on board with that one. But how does coffee tie into fat burning?
Apparently, the caffeine can slightly increase your metabolism and help with something called thermogenesis, which is basically the process of your body burning calories to produce heat.
Ah, so it can give your metabolism a little boost. That's interesting.
But on the flip side, there's certain things you want to avoid, specifically sugary drinks like fruit juices, sports drinks, and sodas.
Makes sense. All that sugar will spike your blood sugar and mess with your insulin levels. We talked about that earlier.
Right. Even though fruit juice might seem healthy, it's basically just concentrated sugar.
So ditch the sugary drinks, stick to water, and enjoy a cup of coffee. Got it.
Now, let's talk about exercise. The No Diet isn't about spending hours and hours in the gym. It recommends working out with weights just 3 days a week, keeping those sessions to around 60 to 75 minutes max.
Okay, so it's about quality over quantity.
And for cardio, it recommends low-intensity aerobic work no more than 4 times a week for about 30 minutes each time. Think brisk walking, a light jog, something like that.
And the goal is to burn fat without overdoing it.
Exactly. You want to avoid overtraining, which can actually hinder your progress.
Oh, and when it comes to tracking your progress, the book says don't just rely on the scale.
Ah, I see. The scale can be deceptive because it doesn't tell you what's actually happening with your body composition.
Right, you could be losing fat and gaining muscle, but the scale might not reflect that. So the book suggests using other measures like body fat percentage, which you can track with skin fold calipers.
And paying attention to how your clothes fit and how you look in the mirror. Exactly. Those are often better indicators of real progress. Now, one of the more intriguing aspects of this approach is the suggested duration. Duchenne recommends following the isocaloric system consistently for at least 77 days.
77 days. Why that specific time frame?
He explains that it takes time for your metabolism to adapt and for cellular turnover to occur. It's about creating lasting changes, not just quick fixes.
So it's a long-term strategy, not a crash diet.
And finally, he lays out 4 reasons why the isocaloric no diet is supposedly so easy to follow.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me why it's so easy.
First, you shouldn't experience constant hunger. Second, you shouldn't feel overly tired or moody. Third, you shouldn't lose muscle mass. And fourth, there aren't overly restrictive rules that make you feel deprived.
Wow, those are some pretty compelling reasons. They address a lot of the common complaints people have with traditional diets.
Right, no more feeling hungry all the time, no more energy crashes, no more sacrificing muscle mass.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, that's what we're here to explore. We're diving deep into this system so you can decide for yourself if it's something you want to try.
So to recap, this isocaloric approach is all about balancing your macronutrients, keeping blood sugar stable, and working with your body's natural biochemistry to burn fat and build muscle. It's not about deprivation or extreme measures. It's about creating sustainable habits that lead to lasting results.
Exactly. And it really challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom around dieting. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about fat loss.
That's what makes these deep dives so interesting. They force you to think differently.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought. Think about all the dietary advice you've been given over the years. Does it align with what we've discussed today? Could shifting your focus from simply restricting calories to strategically balancing your macronutrients and understanding the role of hormones like insulin be the key to achieving your body composition goals in a way that feels sustainable and empowering? It's definitely something to ponder.
Absolutely. It's all about finding what works for you. And sometimes that means challenging the status quo.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.